Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ethan, and it's my privilege to be here today with our special guest, Yat Siu, co-founder and chairman of Animoca Brands. Welcome, man.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Before this show, I've reviewed more than 10 videos of your interviews, and you were absolutely pioneer in Web3, like NFTs and blockchain games. So more than that, you actually started your career in the 80s. So for those who may not have much knowledge about you, would you mind giving us a brief introduction about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, I'm Yat. I'm the chairman and co-founder of Animoca Brands. I guess a little bit about myself. I have been around the block. My first job, although I was a child at the time, was in the 80s working for Atari. I grew up in Vienna, in Austria, actually. I came to Asia much later. And eventually made Hong Kong my home. But, I got involved with tech, really writing software that would help me compose music better. And I posted it on something called CompuServe, which was kind of a pre-internet type of sort of bulletin board system. And that really introduced me to the world of online. And even though it wasn't the internet as we know today, it was kind of like a pre-internet, pre-metaverse type of experience. And I guess the one thing that was formative for me was, and of course I didn't quite realize it back then, is growing up as a sort of Chinese Asian person in Vienna in the 70s and 80s, obviously there were not a lot of us, right? So I was definitely a minority, but I spoke German fluently, and I was a child, and I was still able to online. People were treating me basically like an adult because of the fact that I knew how to code and I wrote software that they cared for, and people sent me money for it as well, which is kind of crazy, I thought. And that led me to a job at Atari. And Atari, which of course the Atari of back then is completely different from the Atari of today. They at first it was surprising that I was a child, but then it didn't matter because I had skills, right? And I think this is the truth for anything that we've seen in the industry, whether it's the original Web 1 or Web 2 or even Web 3. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter sort of even how old you are or where you're from. If you have skills, you have opportunity. So I think that was something that attracted me to the space. And I came to Hong Kong like in 1993. I started one of Hong Kong's very first internet service providers called Hong Kong Online. That was a long time ago. Yeah. And again, it was born out of the same sort of idea of, at that point, I was getting connected to people online. When I was working in the US, I thought, well, now I'm in Hong Kong, everyone should be online, right? It should be a good thing, right? So I was trying to deliver that service. It was really, really hard because in 93, I guess it's a little bit like, people trying to explain crypto in like 2010, 2011, right? That was kind of how it was like for me. But I've gone through these waves and we started entering in the NFT space with Animoca Brands really in late 2017, early 2018, starting with CryptoKitties. And since then, we have made over 100 investments in the NFT space. Companies like Sky Mavis, which is Axie Infinity, Opensea, Decentraland, Wax, all these companies that today have become quite meaningful and very influential in the NFT space, Dapper Labs and so on. But also we own the Sandbox, which just recently announced a fundraise by SoftBank, which again, I think is amazing because it just demonstrates that I think NFTs and the metaverse has really hit mainstream thinking, right? With Facebook going in and Microsoft going in as well, and SoftBank investing in Sandbox, and we also have Rev Racing and Gamey and Quid and many other products that we're building.
It's a pretty journey, right? And the mission of this channel is to help 1 million people make a living by doing what they love. Since you were born in a family with two extraordinary artists. But I wonder, like, how you build up your self-awareness? I mean, how did you find out what you love to do, what you were good at, and how you could create value for the world with it?
So I think I had a few benefits going forward. One of them was that because my mother, as an artist, she was opera singer first, she's on tour a lot, right? That's what artists would do. Which meant that actually I was living by myself for long periods of time. Not like boarding school, just living by myself. And it's kind of funny because, I'm a parent of three kids today. And I know that this would be completely illegal today, right? It was probably illegal back then too, but nobody cared, right? Yeah. So I had the freedom to kind of do what I wanted to do. And I think that's an important part in terms of self-discovery. I feel like if, I don't know, it wasn't like I said, hey, I want to work on a computer. I mean, like all kids, I like playing video games, and I was experimenting with stuff. And then, I was first coding on BASIC, I was just experimenting and playing around. But I think I had time to discover. And, I had actually had time to maybe even be bored and just like find other ways to do it. Right? And I think that's important, because that's when ideas form. Like, hey, this could be useful. This could be interesting for me. I think today, one of the challenges that our children have, and sometimes, I have to be mindful myself of this, is that we overschedule our kids. We plan their life.
Yes, right? Definitely.
They call this helicopter parenting, right? In our generation, our parents had no time to be helicopter parents, right? They had to work, they had to do stuff, right? But in this world, actually, our parents are always telling us what to do, right? They're always like, oh, this is your tutoring, this is your class, this is whatever. And I think that's a mistake, because we don't give time for our children to think, right? I mean, just think of our own life. We need time to think too. We need time to digest our environment, to understand. And if we don't let our children do that, then we won't be able to do that. So I think the self-discovery came from the fact that I had freedom and time to do that. And of course, I was formed by the experience of living in Vienna, as a minority, using the computer to get connected online in a very primitive fashion at the time. That was, my experience. But I think everyone has their own experiences, but they have to have the time to discover it.
Yeah. So maybe being bored is sometimes a good thing. Maybe that also explains why Bored App was so popular here.
Kind of like being bored
and connected with others. Yeah. So after your journey working for Atari, building your own business as an ISP, email service provider, and mobile game publisher, now you're hacking the blockchain space. So what's your favorite growth hack for entrepreneurs?
I mean, growth hacking is an interesting term, right? Because really, it sort of seems to indicate that you are sort of doing something differently, or like sort of hacking your way into something that is maybe unusual or different. And I used to also use this term in terms of doing something like hacking your way into something, growth hacking. But I think today, my perspective on this is that you'll find your hacks because it's an optimization. But whatever you do, if you can have a mission, and if the purpose is greater than yourself, then you will find the best way to get there, because it's so important, right? So in our case, it's about delivering digital property rights. We think this is absolutely fundamental, and it's very exciting, but it's also very important, especially what's happening with threats like Facebook or Tencent trying to be their own metaverse, right? So we're fueled by that, and so we think of strategies and ways in which we can do that, because our mind is occupied by how can we win? How can we make sure that the future we want to see is the right kind of future that we can help create, right? If, for instance, your purpose is money, for instance, right? Then the problem is that you don't need to be sticking to one purpose. You can just, because you can make money many ways, right? Right. And so, and if you look at the early days of crypto, right, when crypto was dropping really hard, right, 2018, right, just when we started, Bitcoin was 3,000, everyone was fleeing the scene. And the reason they're fleeing the scene is because the people weren't there. I mean, some were, but most people at the time weren't there because they cared about decentralization or they cared about a new system. They were there for money. And when the money wasn't there, they were all gone, right? Right? And so I think, if I was to say, what's the best way to optimize your performance in life? I would say try to do something that is so important for you personally. Then every solution or every attempt to find a way, you'll get there because it is so important for you and you're willing to spend the time and effort on it, right? Like things that are mission critical to you or yourself is something that you keep thinking about. Like you don't stop thinking about it, right? Whereas a job, maybe after 6 o'clock, you're like, I'm done. Let me do something else, right? So I would say try to find something that which purpose is greater than your own.
Yeah, so I believe that one of your purpose now is to help people understand the importance of the digital ownership. So do you think that people value enough their digital assets in today's life?
No, unfortunately, which is why we have a lot of work to do. Yeah. And the reason why we don't appreciate our digital life is because we never understood that it had value, because we don't understand how the world works in the digital sense. We understand when people say data, they don't think of data as property. They think data as privacy. They think data as something that, maybe belongs to me, sort of, kind of, and you should have access to it or not. But they don't understand that the data that you give to Facebook or you give to Epic or you give to Tencent every day as you use it is making them richer and more powerful and more influential. They don't understand that the world's most valuable resource is data, and that the creator of the data is you. And that in fact, what is making it valuable is your time, right? Like, when I'm online playing a game, or when I'm on Facebook, my time is valuable. That time I am giving to the platform, and they take it from us, and they make money from it, and they sell it back to us. I mean, isn't that crazy, right? As I use Facebook, Facebook learns more about me and can sell me an advertising that will make me pay me for something, right? And if I'm using a game that I play today, I'm giving the game knowledge about me so that they can give me an item that I will probably want to buy. Right? So I mean, I understand the reason for research. I get it, right? But that means that the data that I'm giving to these platforms is valuable because they make money from us. Why should we not get a cut of that? Why should we not actually deserve that? Because it is in fact our property. And the problem is that because we think our a physical life is the most important thing, and our digital life is support. Because we obviously live in the physical world, like where we sleep and eat and drink. However, actually, in a virtual sense, what happens to you if you lose your online access? What happens if Facebook said, "I don't like you, let's remove you," right? Or Twitter or Tencent or whatever? Your business is worth nothing, right? Or very little. Your ability to make friends is removed. In fact, your human potential is reduced tremendously. So as a result, actually your virtual life perhaps is maybe not just as important, maybe in some cases more important than your physical life. I mean, just imagine, can you conduct your business without online? So that means actually, I think that owning your data and data rights actually is as important and as critical as like part of the charter of basic human rights. But right now, our governments and our systems do not appreciate that data rights should be a human right. So they treat it as something that is product. So data is a product. It is not it is not a right. And therefore you live under the terms of service of the platform, which means Facebook or Spotify or Tencent or those companies, they decide how you should exist in their environment, which means ultimately we all work for Facebook. And just actually, when you think of it, it's logical that that's what's happening to us, but it's terrible, right? This way. And this is basically why we describe the age we live in as a kind of digital colonialism, where we are basically literally serfs and slaves, but we are happy slaves because we don't know, right? We don't know.
We feel that it's free, right?
Yeah, we think it's free, therefore we should get it. And it's a very good trick if you think about it, right? However, this is the part, right? It's like when, I describe the age very similar to sort of, I describe it as a kind of digital feudalism because I think of it like 500-600 years ago when most of the world, was ruled by kings and queens and they didn't have property. And once they knew what the rights of property were, then they started caring about, how do I make sure this property is mine? How do I ensure that this is really truly something I can pass on and pass on to my children or sell on? That's when people started caring about government. That's when people started caring about democracy, right? Because they wanted to protect something that was theirs. And in the online world, we don't actually own anything. So we don't need to protect it at the end of the day, right? But if I now own it, then I will care to protect it. And why this understanding is critical is that once you have ownership, then you care for the institution that ensures the protection of it, which means that you will never surrender your assets and your digital content and your data to a platform that can take it away from you anytime. So you have to have that understanding. It's like, why do people think or care about democracy? Well, I mean, obviously they care about the politics and the system in place to ensure that our rights are protected, right?
Yeah.
And so they want to vote for the people that make sure that, the place is operated in a way that keeps them safe and that they can have what they think is truly theirs. So it means that if someone comes in and says, I want to sort of take away anything I want, anytime I want, people will not allow it, right? And therefore, you have an institution established to protect that. We need the same in the digital world. And that's why blockchain is so powerful, because blockchain, by its nature, can provide that. And then with DAOs, you can have governance around the rights of these assets.
I think that at the end of the day, maybe one day we lose what we have on Facebook, that we found that we cannot download or back up any of our videos and photos, then we will feel lost. They will find that is important. So now we have blockchain and NFT technology to solve part of the digital ownership problems. But what are the other challenges we have to overcome?
Well, I mean, first, there's many challenges to overcome, right? The first challenge to overcome is just awareness, right? Which is, by the way, getting much better today. Like 1 year ago, it was still hard. Now it's not as hard because people are at least, generally curious. Although some people also don't like it, but also they don't understand it, right? So that's one of the challenges. The second challenge is, and I think this is the conversation, right? The challenge is around, well, we need to help people get onto the metaverse and understand decentralization, but the interface to get onto sort of DeFi and GameFi is just very hard. You need a wallet, you need a MetaMask, and all that. So it's not easy, right? And so I used to think that it was really, really important that we allow people to onboard as easy as possible, which I think has importance, so that they can just have the convenience. But then if you make it so easy, actually they don't understand how it works. I don't think that's safe because that's centralization, right? So you have this balancing act. In fact, we lost our internet freedoms, you could say, because we accepted that the convenience of centralized platforms was better than the freedoms we would receive by having an open platform. Now, here's the thing. Because we can't value content in the Web2 construct, we were very willing to give it up. Right? Because what is your data really worth? I don't know. Because the data to ourselves, even all of our photos, they are personal memories, but they're not very valuable, right? But when you give the photos to Google or to Facebook, they can use face analysis and create profiles. It's very valuable to them, right? So because that layer of how it becomes valuable is not known to us, we don't appreciate that. But what if I knew that this data is worth thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars, because it's my idea space or it's something I own, right? Then you will care about who you give it, right? So and actually, just like having a bank account and understanding personal finances, I think you need to understand decentralization, and you understand how to have a decentralized wallet to be a responsible citizen in a decentralized world. Right? I think it's hard to say, oh, don't worry about finance. It's like saying, here, take your money and take care of it. Right? Right? At the end of the day, I don't think that's okay too. I mean, I know some of us do that. Some of us say, I don't know money, and you take it. And it usually doesn't work out for them, right? Just think about it. You give your money to manage to some person who maybe does a good job or maybe not, right? You give it to, a fund that, does very safe investing. But do they do a good job? Well, you don't know, right? You have no idea, right? Every person who manages their own finances, typically speaking responsibly, probably does better. And I think the same is true for DeFi. I think our job is to onboard people, but it's to also educate them about how to do it responsibly. So I think we need to have lots of people be truly decentralized. And that's the challenge, because it is education as well. It's not just, use it, right? And that's why I think blockchain games is so powerful, because think about games. When you onboard to a new game, especially a mid-core to hardcore game, it's not easy. It's very hard. I need to know coordination. I need to know strategy. I need to know which like in a game like Apex or Fortnite, Like I need to know what gun to use. I need to know, it's a lot of skill. So, and you know what, interesting, our children can tell us everything about the games they play at a micro complex level, which is, by the way, much more complicated than opening a metaverse wallet, right? Right? Yeah. Playing a game is so hard, actually, if you think about it, right? Most of the older people or parents who play the games our children play, they would be lost. They would be so confused.
They will just give it up.
They will just give up.
In a short time.
Exactly, in a short time. So my point is that games and gamification has already demonstrated that you can actually teach people complicated things at scale. There's 2.7 billion people who know how to play very, very different games that are not based on any rules you know from before, right?
Yeah.
Right? They're different finger skills, different logic, different strategy. Yeah. And we know it so well. So I think we need to do the same with decentralization. I think we need to find through gaming a way for people to go on board and learn the space because it's meaningful and valuable for them. And in the end, it just becomes part of the rules. And you look at Philippines and Axie Infinity. In rural Philippines, there are more people who have a Ronin wallet than a credit card. I mean, I think it's a great demonstration that you can onboard people, through a game because they want to play the game and because it's important for them. And it doesn't matter that it's, a little bit inconvenient.
When speaking of the traditional finance, it's like a gated community, and now DeFi is like a more open metaverse. But metaverse, it could be a brand new open world for everyone, or it might be a product of a huge enterprise. So what's your vision for the metaverse?
It has to be open. I think the real metaverse is the open metaverse. If you are a closed metaverse, it's the fake metaverse. And the reason I think it's fake is like Disneyland. We go to Disneyland for fun. It's in the real world, right? Yeah. But we don't think it's real because we don't want to live there, right? I mean, some people love it, but if you live in Disneyland, then you have to live by the rules of Disneyland. You have to obey the system. You have to do all these things that, honestly speaking, I don't think you want to be there. I mean, I don't know how people who work in Disneyland, if they're very happy. But my point is that that's a fake environment. It's a make-believe because we don't actually own anything there, right? Which means we also don't have control of our life. In Disneyland, you have to play by the rules of Disneyland. Okay, so this is Facebook, right? This is any other closed game. You have to play by their rules. If you are outside of the rules, you're bad. And, you can't even change the rules because you have no stake in it. So the open metaverse is, however, one where you have a stake in it. It means something to you because I own the property, which also means that I have a say in it. And more importantly, if I don't like or I can't change it the way that I think it should be, I can leave. And I can leave by taking all my assets with me because they are mine. Now, to me, this is what's powerful here. Because the freedom to move, the freedom to immigrate to somewhere else, with all of my value generally intact, is I think the force factor that requires other metaverses to do the right thing. Because in the past, countries created borders and systems to protect a certain group of people, you could say. But at the end of the day, did it because they had the power to do it, right? Like, changing trade rules or erecting walls, right? I grew up in Austria, right, in the 70s and 80s. So when I was living in Vienna, this was still the Cold War, right? So we had, like, when you crossed the border, it was military at the time, right? And, my mother was working in Berlin, so I would cross through Checkpoint Charlie and so once in a while as a kid, when I would visit her and stuff like that. And it was fascinating, but also terrifying because anyone who lived in East Berlin could not leave. So because in the physical world, we can erect borders. And even today, we can prevent people from going into a country, or we can restrict people from leaving a country, right? So that makes it hard. Now, in the digital world, actually, you can go anywhere you want, right? You can choose a community you like and live there if you like, right? And because your assets are, tradable, movable, and your own, you can take all your value out, which means that the metaverse that wants to keep you has to serve your interest, which means that there's a I think of this as a healthy relationship between, the people who are living in it and the people who are maybe helping maintain it, because the metaverse is one that has a governance system that serves the majority interest. And this is the key thing. A closed metaverse does not serve a majority interest. It always serves a minority interest. Like Facebook, it serves the shareholders, it serves maybe the management, maybe the employees. It does not serve its users, right? Which is why there's trouble, because the users want something that the company either doesn't want to or cannot provide, right? And there's no mechanism to solve that, right? So I think this is the difference here. So Facebook is a fake metaverse. I know that they talk about, they call themselves Meta, which is great.
Meta,
because most people don't know what metaverse is, so they would
try to define it.
They're trying to define it, right? The Tencent was registering all the 10 metaverse trademarks in China, right? So they're all trying to wrestle control of the term,
like so build a walled garden, right?
To build their walled gardens, and they talk about some interoperability. They talk about using NFTs, but I don't know how it's going to work because they don't tell us. They're not being transparent about it, right? And you have to remember, how did Facebook become big? Facebook became big because they had an API that said, everyone build on top of us. It'll be good, right? And then after they made Facebook big because they brought all the users and all the data to Facebook, what did Facebook do? They said, thank you, and bye-bye. And what could they do? Nothing, right? So I think this is the issue when you build a system that is closed. I don't believe that people willingly create bad systems. Like, I don't think that people were trying to create intentional mousetraps of data. It's just that once you have so much power, it starts to corrupt you, right? I mean, the proverb that absolute power corrupts absolutely historically has proven true many, many times, if not all the time. And that's because the minority wants to protect something that doesn't serve the majority. And also you get disconnected from reality because it's not your world. I mean, people who are shareholders in Facebook or people who are, working at Facebook, how many of them live like the people who actually use Facebook?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I think they don't understand. If there's a problem that happens in Indonesia, or if there's something that's happening in Thailand, actually, how are people working in Facebook really going to understand what's happening there, right? I mean, they can try as much as they can with all the best intentions, but it's very, very hard. And yet they control the decision-making processes of how information and how things might flow in that country, right? And that's the thing why I think that we're living in an age that is essentially like digital feudalism. And Facebook is basically like a new king. Right?
So what you have said just reflects the strategy of Animoca Brands. Like, we knew that Animoca Brands has invested in a lot of famous companies in the blockchain industry, like Opensea, Dapper Labs, and SkyMovis, the developer of Axie Infinity. So what are the other innovative applications or startup business that we don't have now, but we could expect to see in the future?
Well, first of all, I think NFTs will touch everything. Okay, just to be clear, right? So, and as a result, we made investments in many different kinds of NFT-related businesses or chains that were supporting NFTs. Right. So we're not just in whether it's Flow or Polygon, as in Matic or like Hedera, right? We Ethereum, of course, right? Harmony, like we support all of them that are building stuff in the NFT space, right? To us. That was a really sort of important thing from a multi-chain standpoint. But we also, all the projects that we're supporting as well, because the main thing is, as long as you're building open, then what happens is that the network effect of this open participation benefits the entire ecosystem. So even when you think about our Sandbox, by us making Sandbox build open, we not only benefit the entire Web3 community by participating in it and using assets in and out and bringing the communities in and out of an open platform like the Sandbox, right? We're also actually creating value for all of the other communities as they can freely move their assets cross-border, if you will, into one metaverse or one world into another, right? And from our standpoint, that's what we think we need to build. We need to make non-fungible tokens what we consider the center of your digital experience, right? Yeah. Whether this is identity, whether this is for utility, whether this is for, just art, right? I mean, what you own is who you are, right? I mean, in the physical world, when you wear clothes, you're saying something about who you are. When you're buying a car, which by the way is never a good investment, right? But it's probably one of the most expensive.
It's a social token, right?
Yes, it is. It's a social token. A car is social. It says something about you. If you're buying a Tesla, maybe you're energy friendly. If you're buying a Rolls Royce, well, okay, right? So these are all things about who you are anyway, and this is the identification. And now it's not just it's proof of authentic identity. So we think that this will touch every aspect, right? And so from our standpoint, we've done over 100 investments. We're going to continue to do more. I hope to have hundreds more, right? As the space goes, because also everything we're building, including our own businesses, we all aim to decentralize them. Meaning that in the Sandbox, if you look at the tokenomics, you'll see that at the end of the day, the company reserve is obviously a minority interest, and the rest is basically distributed to the community over time, right? And they have a say in how the future of Sandbox will be, or the future of gaming, or the future of Quid. This will all be community owned, right? And we think that's the way, which also is the reason why for us it's not a problem to make many investments, because we don't need to own one thing, right? Because we think that if we end up building to just own one thing, inadvertently we will turn into the thing that we don't want to be, right?
Yes.
And so by decentralizing ourselves and all of our projects with a path to do that, we will still, I think, be a very successful business, and we can still, give good shareholder return and value, but we will also not be in a situation where we will end up turning into this sort of monster, of our own creation, because now we want to be a monopoly, right? This ensures that we won't ever want to turn into one.
Yeah. So what if an NFT team is watching this video now and think, how could I get invested by Animoca Brands? So any tips or anything that you have seen that's worked?
Look, tips. So first of all, obviously we have a lot of people trying to contact us, and we're very grateful for your interests and everything. But first of all, we do have an accelerator called Launchpad Luna. You can apply for Launchpad Luna. We are trying to run many batches. Last time we had so many applications. They were all really amazing. We could only pick up to, I think, 32. However, we're going to keep doing it. So if you want to do that, that's the accelerator. But the other one, honestly speaking, is, we're on Twitter, right? We're on Telegram. Telegram's hard because it's very noisy, right? But I think Twitter is a good way also to sort of signal. You could email, right? Email is a bit old-fashioned, but you can still reach us, with email, for instance, on Animoca Brands. But there's multiple ways to get in touch with us. The other thing I would say, and this is how we also get in touch with projects that make sense, is sometimes the way to get in touch with a project that works well is to get involved with the project that we're building as well, and demonstrating that, right? For instance, if you're owning a piece of Sandbox land and you're building something, then it's easier to chat because you're already a neighbor type of thing, right? Right? Or if you buy some cars and you race on Rev Racing and try it out, and it's you're part of the community, you're in the Discord and you're chatting. I think it's easier, right? Well, after all, what is it that we're building? We're building community. And what is the way that you get to know a community is you have to be in it first, right? So I think that's the other way, which is to just participate in some of the things we're doing and get to know us that way, and then communicate with us in that context. I think you might get some good results. Not necessarily, obviously, we're almost like 550 people or so, give or take, right? So as an organization, we're not very big, but we're big enough that we have multiple touch points that you can talk to. And we try to be as welcoming as possible. The only thing is time, right? So everyone's busy, but we're very happy to talk to everyone, and I think if they spend the time understanding what we do, then it's easier for us to engage, because there's less, it's faster to onboard.
Yeah, so I know we are running out of time, so here I have the last question for you. Like, play to earn is the latest craze. So however, what do you think that gaming becomes a digital form of labyrinth. So what's the advice you would impart to the audience on the values perspective and how should they get an engagement in the metaverse?
So at the end of the day, play to earn really created a derivative of value for our time, right? Mm-hmm. Just how I explained earlier, what is Facebook without its free users? Nothing, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
What is a game without the free users? Not very valuable. Yeah. And why? Well, in the game, if there's no free users, the paying users won't pay, right?
Yeah.
If free users don't use Facebook, there's no data and no social graph that you can build on to create value. So we are already spending our time to make those systems valuable. Mm-hmm. So what play to earn really does is it takes the construct, and many people do it differently. Axie does it one way, with Rev we do it another way. So there's not mm-hmm. one way for play to earn to work. But the idea of play to earn is that it rewards your time, right? And hopefully it can reward your time better, certainly better than free, but maybe mm-hmm. even enough to make a real full-time living if mm-hmm. you're that kind of, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what play to earn is. Now, that means, is play to earn like a job? Yes, it could be. But I would mm-hmm. say the same thing about work. There's some people who go to work just to make money.
Yeah.
But there's some people who go to work because it's fun. It's because they want to do, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this is true too in the gaming world. Right now, everything is entertainment, I understand.
Yeah.
But you should play the games that you love anyway and try to make money from that. And then in that case, if you have ownership, if you can make an income and you can have fun. I mean, isn't that the absolute sort of best way to live? To live in a way that sort of you like to do and you can create value? Because remember, a person who plays a game for free is offering value to the network. Mm-hmm. You're making the network richer by your participation. Why should you not own a piece of that? And so my perspective is that once people understand this, they will never go to a game that doesn't give you that value, right? Because it's unfair, right? Like nobody will work for free, right? I mean, if you're going to work for a company and you say, this will be so much fun, I'll pay you nothing.
It's totally not fun.
you would never do that, right? And that's what's happening in the digital world, because they were trained to believe that this is normal, right? In history, the way that kingdoms used to control their population was ignorance. But if people don't know how to read or write, if they did not have knowledge, you can control society, right? Because they don't know, right? Which means you can say the rule, working for free like this is normal. Because I said so. Okay, boss. Right? Right? Because you don't know. You have no
choice.
You have no choice. You think that's normal because everyone else lived the same way. And with digital data rights, it is right now the case. We have been trained to think this is normal. Our job is to tell people this is not normal, and actually that you're giving up a lot of value. And play to earn is one of the most powerful ways, I think, to do that, because billions of players in the world play games for free, for no value, right? And all that value they're making for the game company, that is locked economic substance. It's energy, right? It's time. So you unlock it. That to me is powerful. So I think that's why we're so excited about blockchain gaming, because I think this is the way in which we can help onboard, 1 billion people onto the blockchain.
Yeah.
Cool. It's always enjoyable to listen to you talking about your insights of the Web3. I think we can sit here and talk for hours and hours, but I know that your schedule is very tight. So thank you for being here and for what you have shared with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching this episode, I believe it brings a lot of value to you. Please show your love, follow Yat on Twitter, and pay attention to Animoca Brands products and the project they invested in. There's gold in them, right? Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.